All right, welcome back. Uh, Rain setup Mark II. So when I did the first rain setup, I was not aware the trophy series was going to be a big testing ground for rain. I did not have much practice with rain conditions. So the last setup was in the right direction, but definitely not optimized. So if you were new to iRacing, new to the rain situation, you've got lightly wet tracks, you've got medium, you've got heavy wet tracks. And all of those situations can be sort of static. They can also be drying, or they can be the wet can be increasing. So something to keep in mind when you're getting into a race. Check that forecast to see what you figure is going to be happening on track for the race. So a lightly wet track. I've had a lot of comments here, and myself included. A little confusion. You can't see really any water on the track. No puddles, no nothing. However, your car, you hit a wet section and your car is going to spin. So, as of making this video, that is the situation. In an update, it may change that there is more water visible on a lightly wet track. However, if you're trying to learn the track, I suggest you get into a practice session with medium, or you set up your own practice session. When the condition is medium, you will see the puddles on the track. And then that way you can figure out where the drier part of the track is, where the rain collects on the track, in the apexes, on the straightaways, all that kind of stuff, the places you want to avoid when you're driving. And then unfortunately, really what you have to do is just sort of memorize where the rain collects, so that if you are on a lightly wet track, you will know where to still avoid those areas. A lightly wet track as well, especially if it's in a situation where it's going to be drying, you may want to use a dry setup. However, you may want to dial back the settings a little bit, reduce the brake bias. We'll talk about that in a minute. Reduce the cambers maybe a little bit. Reduce the ARB in the rear if it's turned up a little bit. You may want to decrease it a notch or two. As well, if you're using say a standard gear stack, you may want to increase that to tall, or tall to a very tall. In any sort of rain condition, I don't think a short stack is going to be a good idea at all. Even in dry conditions, it's easy to spin up the tires with a short stack. So even if it's a track you would normally have a short stack, I would think standard is a better way to go, or tall for that matter. So once you get into a medium or heavy wet track, though, you do really need to have a wet setup for the car for sure. So even if it's medium and it's going to be drying a little bit, I think a full wet setup is probably the way you want to go. So we'll go through this setup here. This is for a medium or heavy wet condition. So the ride height is reduced, just trying to increase the mechanical grip as much as possible for the car. The front ARB, it is 0. If you turn up the front ARB, it can lift a tire off the track, and having 3 tires on the track is not as good as having 4 tires on the track. Damper compression, I've not played around with that too much. Having the car shift more under acceleration and braking doesn't sound like a good idea in wet conditions. And in wet conditions, you're probably not going to be jumping a lot of curbs. You're probably going to be avoiding most of the curbs. So having a softer compression probably is not a good idea. However, if you've tested that out and know something I don't, leave a comment. Brake bias. So this is a big one. This is a big change in dry conditions. If you're locking up too easy, generally you want to increase the brake bias. However, in wet conditions, you want to decrease the brake bias. So even lightly wet, you would probably want to reduce your brake bias a couple of percentage points. If you're at a 57 normally, you might want it at a 55 or a 54. In medium and heavy wet conditions, you're probably looking around 51-52%. Again, brake bias is an individual thing, but you definitely want to have it on the lower side. I'm pretty happy with about 51.5 in medium and heavy wet conditions. It makes a huge difference. So if you've been running at a higher percentage, get that down. It is going to make a big difference. Spring rates, front and rear as low as they go. That's to increase mechanical grip. You don't want a really stiff car in the rain. Camber, big change here. So my last track guide, it was in the right direction, lowering the camber, but I just did not lower it enough. Lowering the camber now, it's 0.2 degrees in the front, 0.3 in the back. That is significantly lower than what you're normally running in a dry setup. And it makes a fair amount of difference to how much grip you have on the lightly wet patches, and even if you get your tires on the puddles, this does help out quite a bit from your car spinning and losing control. Makes it a lot easier to recover if you do catch a puddle. Toe in is still not quite down at the bottom because the car has a lot of understeer. You do want a little bit of toe in just to get that turn in as well. Having the toe in turned up a little bit does allow for improved braking when you hopefully get on the dry patches to brake. And yeah, so in the rear, 0.3 in the rear, and then plus 0.2 for the toe in the rear as well. Now, this is miserable to change this. The iRacing garage does not like the camber down this low. This is going to be a bit of a process to get the cambers and toes reduced as much as they are. It every time you get the camber down this low, every notch, the garage is going to change your toe in. It's going to change other cambers. It is a bit miserable. It is going to take a little bit of time. Change the camber on one corner, press apply, then it'll probably change the toe in. Then you have to reset the toe to the proper amount, then press apply. It's going to be a bit of a process. Once you get it done, save it. If you are getting into a race, you do not want to be changing these settings while you're in the practice or the qualifying time. This takes a little bit of time to get the settings to where you need them to be. So do save this as a rain setup. You can do some minor tweaks to it prior to the race without it getting too much of a problem. But if you're trying to go from a 1.3 camber down to a 0.3 camber, it is a bit of a process. So just be aware of that. So in the rear, the ride height is equal to the front. That is just to promote a little bit more understeer to keep that back end a little more steady, less twitchy out there. ARB is reduced down to 0. Again, in a light rain setting, you may want that up at 5 mils. 10 might be playing with a little bit of fire, but definitely medium and heavy wet tracks. Getting that ARB down is going to give you a lot more compliant back end, a lot less likely to do a 360 or 180 on you. Rear compression, again, haven't really touched on that too much. I don't think having the car shifting a lot more is going to help through the puddles. However, again, let me know if it does. Fuel levels on a medium and heavy wet track, you're probably going to be able to reduce your fuel level if you want to try that. You know, down a liter or something, because the lap times just are going to be a fair bit slower. And gear stack, again, like I said, short stack probably never a good idea in wet conditions. A standard maybe in light, but definitely for medium and heavy rain conditions, tall or very tall is going to make things a little easier. Get you spinning less out of the corner if you get on the gas a little bit too much. So that is the new rain setup. It is quite a bit improved over the old one. Again, there'll probably be some updates coming with the rain. If there's any big changes, I will leave that in the description. So check back if there's any big rain changes. Hopefully, snow is going to be a while away, because rain is definitely a bit of a challenge. So good luck out there. We'll see you on track, and we'll see you next time.